of a Coke can is a smoke grenade, and the idea is if this vehicle comes under attack or is fired at, it can fire a pattern of smoke grenades out in front of the vehicle. Big smoke ring builds up very, very quickly, and you can maneuver, retreat, reposition yourself, do whatever you need without the enemy seeing you. So again, it's a very useful feature that a lot of armoured vehicles carry with them. Now, another vehicle that looks almost the same, doesn't it? But again, very different role, this vehicle, on the battlefield. This vehicle coming on now, this is what the military would call an APC, or Armoured Personnel Carrier. Now, if you've seen inside the museum on our trench display, there's the last remaining Mark I First World War tank there. The whole idea of that tank in the First World War was to drive across the battlefield, across no man's land, crushing down the barbed wire, letting our infantry follow on behind and getting into the German trenches without getting held up and massacred on the wire by machine gun or artillery fire. Now, by the Second World War, armoured vehicles are doing many more things very quickly. So they start building armoured personnel carriers to bring the infantry forward. Now, in the back of this armoured personnel carrier, they're going to give you a wave now. We've got some volunteer infantry. We picked out the audience a bit earlier on. We've given them a helmet, we've given them a gun and a uniform, and a bit later in the display, they're going to show you how an armoured personnel carrier like this might be used in a combat situation. Now, this vehicle was designed after World War II for the British Army. It's called FV432. Sometimes vehicles get lovely names to them, sometimes they get lumbered with their production number. FV432, Fighting Vehicle 432. And it was designed in the 60s. Really, it's a box of metal on tracks to take the infantry forward to where the fighting is. And once they're there, they don't fight from inside the vehicle, they jump out the door at the back and finish the attack on foot. They often call these in the military battle taxis. It's for taking you where the fighting's going on. Now, the 432, very reliable. It's been in service a long time. It's still in service to this day with the British Army. Like many armoured vehicles, you don't actually ditch them and get rid of them entirely. What you do is you send them back to the factories and they get rebuilt. So the new versions of this are called Bulldog. They've got new engines, new gearboxes. When they go off on campaign, they have lots of extra armour bolted on the outside, but underneath it all is quite often there's a vehicle that is probably about twice the age of the young soldier who's serving in it. So they often, with armoured vehicles, they're in service a long, long time in the military. So again, you've got the driver in the front, commander sits behind, hatches again open, of course they'd close those smoke discharges you can see just above the headlights on the front, and the door, when it moves off, you'll see at the back, that's where they enter and exit. And it's such a simple vehicle, they often used it for many other roles as well. Rather than just carrying infantry, some were made into ambulances, some were command posts, engineer equipment was carried in the back, all sorts of things, because it's, again, it was a reliable and a relatively simple vehicle to produce, so we actually made a lot of them for the British Army. Now, the main armoured personnel carrier used by the British Army these days, we still use the 432, but the main one is actually a bigger vehicle called the Warrior. And they call that an IFV, an infantry fighting vehicle, because the guys inside can actually fight from inside the vehicle. It's got a turret on the top with a cannon in, so it can actually fight as well as just deliver soldiers. And the Warrior is a much bigger and much more powerful vehicle. The engine in a Warrior is actually a starter motor from a destroyer, so it can belt that vehicle around the battlefield as quickly as possible to deliver the troops to where they're needed. And the faster you are, as I said earlier, quite often that's a defence in itself. The quicker you can move around, the less chance the enemy are going to have of knocking you out. But we'll see our 432 in a little while in the display with our volunteer infantry in the back. Now, another one of those vehicles that we tend to overlook, but for the military